She hid their son from the tech billionaire CEO until his life depended on a secret he never knew. Part 2. In our previous story, we met Vivian Reed, a woman who had spent 16 years hiding her son Lucas from his powerful father, tech billionaire Dominic Blackwood. After Dominic rejected her pregnancy, telling her to take care of the problem, Vivian fled with the help of Elena, Dominic's executive assistant, creating new identities and moving whenever Dominic's influence expanded into their area. Lucas grew up believing his father had died before his birth, never knowing his true heritage. At age 8, he was diagnosed with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a genetic heart condition inherited from Dominic. Despite this challenge, Lucas thrived academically, earning a scholarship to prestigious Westridge Academy, ironically funded by Blackwood Industries. Everything changed when Dominic discovered Lucas at a school science fair, secretly obtaining his DNA from a genetics project. A letter arrived confirming the DNA match, with news of an upcoming board meeting where Dominic planned to announce Lucas as his heir. Vivian learned from Elena that Dominic had suffered 2 heart attacks from the same condition Lucas had, and was under pressure from his board for succession plans. Faced with the impossible situation, Vivian realized Lucas needed an expensive specialized procedure that only Dominic could afford. After telling Lucas the truth about his father, they agreed to meet Dominic together. At Elena's office, they negotiated terms. Lucas would receive the medical treatment he needed, while maintaining his privacy and continuing to live with Vivian. In return, Dominic would be allowed to acknowledge Lucas as his son and begin building a relationship with him. As we rejoin their story, Lucas is about to undergo the life-saving heart procedure in Tokyo, arranged by the father he's just met, while Vivian struggles with the new reality that the man she spent 16 years hiding from is now permanently part of their lives. The morning of Lucas's surgery dawned clear and bright over Tokyo. Vivian stood at the hospital window, watching the early light paint the city in gold, while Dominic spoke quietly with Dr. Nishimura in the hallway. Despite everything, a knot of fear tightened in her chest. No matter how advanced the procedure, how renowned the surgeon, this was still her son's heart being operated on. "Mom!" Lucas's voice pulled her from her thoughts. He sat propped up in the hospital bed, already in a surgical gown, his dark hair a stark contrast against the white pillows. "You're doing that thing with your hands." Vivian looked down to find her fingers twisting anxiously together. "Sorry. Old habit." "I'm going to be fine," Lucas said with a confidence that belied his 16 years. Dr. Nishimura has performed this procedure 87 times with only 2 complications, neither fatal. The success rate is... "I know the statistics," Vivian interrupted gently, moving to sit beside him. "But you're not a statistic to me. You're my whole world." Lucas's expression softened. "I know, but I need you to believe this is going to work." He hesitated, then added, "And I need you to try with him, with my father." Vivian glanced toward the doorway, where Dominic's silhouette was visible through the frosted glass. "Lucas, I'm not saying forgive him," Lucas clarified. "Just try. For me. Because whatever happened between you two, I'm part of both of you. And I need to understand that part of myself." Before Vivian could respond, the door opened and Dominic entered, followed by Dr. Nishimura and 2 nurses. "It's time," the doctor said gently. "We need to prepare Lucas for surgery now." Vivian leaned forward, pressing her forehead against her son's. "I love you more than anything in this world." "I love you too, Mom," Lucas whispered. "See you on the other side." Dominic approached the bed, his usual commanding presence subdued in this sterile medical environment. "The surgical team is the best in the world," he said, his voice carrying a rare note of emotion. "And you're stronger than this condition." Lucas looked up at his father, 16 years of absence hanging between them. "Thanks for making this possible." Dominic nodded, words seemingly failing him. After a moment's hesitation, he reached out and squeezed Lucas's shoulder, a gesture small in execution but monumental in meaning. As the nurses began preparing Lucas for transport to the operating room, Vivian and Dominic were ushered to a private waiting area. The space was luxurious by hospital standards. Comfortable seating, a coffee machine, large windows overlooking a Japanese garden. But it still felt like a cage to Vivian as the minutes began to stretch into hours. "He has your resilience," Dominic said after they had been sitting in silence for nearly an hour. "And your moral compass." Vivian looked up from the untouched tea cooling in her hands. "He has your mind, your focus." "The best of both of us, then," Dominic suggested cautiously. "Despite everything." "Despite everything," Vivian agreed quietly. "If you've ever found yourself making peace with someone you never thought you could forgive, hit that like button. Sometimes the hardest bridges to build are the ones we've burned ourselves." The surgery stretched on for 6 hours, each minute an eternity for the parents waiting in tense silence. When Dr. Nishimura finally appeared, still in his surgical scrubs, both Vivian and Dominic rose as one. "The procedure was successful," he announced, his calm voice washing over them like a benediction. "We were able to address the thickened heart muscle completely." Lucas responded exceptionally well. "He's in recovery now and should wake within the hour." Vivian's knees nearly buckled with relief. Dominic, standing beside her, reached out instinctively to steady her, his hand warm and solid on her elbow. "When can we see him?" Dominic asked, his CEO voice momentarily returning. "As soon as he's settled in the ICU," Dr. Nishimura promised. "A nurse will come for you." When the doctor left, Vivian found herself unable to hold back the tears she'd been containing all day. They came in a sudden rush, her body shaking with the release of 16 years of carrying every burden alone. "He's going to be okay," she whispered, more to herself than to Dominic. "He's really going to be okay." To her surprise, Dominic's own eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Yes," he said simply. "Our son is going to be okay." The recovery process was both faster and more challenging than any of them had anticipated. Lucas's young body responded well to the procedure, his vitals stabilizing quickly, but the enforced inactivity drove him to distraction. By the third day, he was begging for his laptop. Dr. Nishimura said minimal stimulation. Vivian reminded him, adjusting his pillows for the 5th time that morning. "Coding is minimal stimulation for me," Lucas argued. "It's practically meditation." "Nice try," Dominic said from the doorway, arriving with a stack of scientific journals instead. Dr. Nishimura approved these. "Reading only, no work." Lucas accepted the journals with poorly disguised eagerness. "Fine. But as soon as I'm cleared, I want to visit that research lab he mentioned." "One step at a time," Vivian cautioned, though she couldn't help smiling at his determination. Over the next 2 weeks, as Lucas grew stronger, a new routine emerged. Vivian stayed at the hospital during the day, while Dominic handled business remotely in the mornings and joined them in the afternoons. In the evenings, they would take turns sitting with Lucas, giving each other brief respites to rest at the hotel. It was during one of these evening shifts, with Lucas finally sleeping peacefully, that Dominic broached the subject they had both been avoiding. "We need to discuss what happens when we return home," he said quietly, his gaze fixed on their sleeping son. "The board expects me to begin integrating Lucas into the company culture, at least symbolically." "He's 16, Vivian reminded him. "His education comes first." "I agree," Dominic said, surprising her. "But there are ways to honor both priorities. Summer internships, mentorship programs, opportunities that would allow him to explore his interests within the company framework without disrupting his schooling." Vivian studied Dominic's profile in the dim light of the hospital room. "You've given this a lot of thought." "I've given everything about Lucas a lot of thought," he admitted. 16 years worth, compressed into the past few weeks. "It doesn't work that way," Vivian said, though without the bitterness that would have colored the same words a month ago. "You can't make up for lost time." "I know." Dominic turned to face her fully. "But I can be present from this point forward, if you'll allow it." The question hung between them, weighted with history and possibility. "It's not just my decision anymore," Vivian said finally. "Lucas wants to know you, to understand that part of himself. I won't stand in the way of that." "Thank you," Dominic said simply. A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the soft beeping of Lucas's monitors and the distant sounds of the hospital at night. He wants to develop that cardiac monitoring system, Vivian said after a while. It's all he talks about when you're not here, using machine learning to predict arrhythmias before they happen. It's brilliant, Dominic acknowledged. Potentially revolutionary for people with our condition. Our condition, Vivian repeated softly. I still can't believe I never knew about your heart problems during our relationship. I was very good at hiding weakness, Dominic said, a note of self-recrimination in his voice. In every aspect of my life. Before Vivian could respond, Lucas stirred, his eyes fluttering open. Are you two actually having a civil conversation? He asked groggily. Or am I hallucinating from the medication? Definitely the medication, Dominic deadpanned, earning a surprised laugh from Vivian. Lucas smiled, drifting back to sleep with the image of his parents sharing a moment of genuine connection for the first time in his life. By the time Lucas was cleared to travel home 3 weeks later, something fundamental had shifted in the dynamic between the three of them. Not forgiveness, exactly. Some wounds were too deep for that, but a tentative truce built around their shared priority. Lucas's well-being and future. The return to normal life, however, proved more complicated than any of them had anticipated. News of Lucas's surgery and his status as Dominic Blackwood's heir had spread, transforming him overnight from an anonymous scholarship student to the subject of intense public interest. This is insane, Lucas muttered as Dominic's security team escorted them through a small crowd of reporters gathered outside their apartment building. I just want to go to chess club without it making the business section. It will settle down, Vivian assured him, though she shared his discomfort with the attention. Inside their apartment, now swept daily for electronic surveillance by Dominic's security team, Lucas collapsed onto the sofa with a sigh. I miss Tokyo. At least there I was just a patient, not a headline. Speaking of Tokyo, Dominic said, following them inside with a large package. Dr. Nishimura sent this for you. Lucas sat up, curiosity overriding his fatigue as he opened the package to reveal a state-of-the-art laptop and a hard drive. A note in Dr. Nishimura's precise handwriting read, for your cardiac monitoring project. The drive contains our research data. Show me what you can do with it. No way, Lucas breathed, his eyes wide. This is incredible. I may have mentioned your ideas to him, Dominic admitted. He was impressed. This is the kind of opportunity you couldn't have given him, Vivian acknowledged quietly to Dominic as Lucas immediately began setting up the computer. No matter how much I worked or saved. And you gave him the foundation to make use of it, Dominic replied. His character, his work ethic, his compassion. Those came from you, Vivian. The simple acknowledgement, delivered without agenda or manipulation, touched something in Vivian that she had thought long buried. The part of her that had once seen the good in Dominic Blackwood, before ambition and fear had twisted it. If you believe that sometimes the most broken relationships can find new purpose through shared love for someone else, comment below. The journey of healing is rarely simple, but always worth the effort. Over the next 6 months, a new normal gradually took shape. Lucas returned to school, now with additional security measures in place but otherwise determined to maintain as much normalcy as possible. His chess team, after some initial awkwardness about his newly revealed identity, rallied around him to win the national championship. A victory made sweeter by the knowledge that they had earned it through skill and teamwork, not his father's name. Dominic honored their agreement, limiting his public appearances with Lucas and focusing instead on building a genuine relationship through their shared interests. Twice-monthly dinners evolved into weekly visits, often centered around Lucas's cardiac monitoring project, which was rapidly progressing from concept to prototype with Dr. Nishimura's remote guidance. Vivian watched this developing bond with complicated emotions. Pride in Lucas's brilliance, gratitude for his improved health, lingering wariness of Dominic's influence, and a growing recognition that her son truly did need both of them in different ways. You should come to dinner next time, Lucas suggested one evening as he prepared for another visit with Dominic. You both talk about the same bioengineering concepts, just using different terminology. It's actually kind of funny. I don't think that's a good idea, Vivian demurred. Why not? You managed to be in the same room for 3 weeks in Tokyo without killing each other, Lucas pointed out with teenage bluntness. And I'm tired of translating between you two. The simple observation gave Vivian pause. Was she still holding on to old grievances at the expense of making things easier for Lucas? The thought lingered as she watched him leave, excited about showing Dominic his latest algorithm refinements. That night, unable to sleep, Vivian found herself reviewing the past 6 months. Lucas was thriving. His health better than it had ever been. His mind engaged with challenging work that might someday help others with their condition. His future suddenly expansive with possibilities she could never have provided alone. And Dominic. He had kept every promise made in Elena's office that day. He had respected their boundaries, prioritized Lucas's education and well-being, and shown genuine interest in knowing his son as a person, not just an heir. The corporate titan who had once dismissed their unborn child as an inconvenience now rearranged board meetings to attend Lucas's chess tournaments. People could change. Or perhaps, more accurately, people could return to their better selves when given reason to. The realization was still fresh in her mind the next evening when her phone rang with Dominic's number. An unusual occurrence, as they typically communicated through carefully worded texts about Lucas's schedule. "Vivian," he said when she answered, his voice carrying an unfamiliar note of excitement. "Lucas did it. The algorithm works. We just ran it against 5 years of cardiac patient data, and it predicted arrhythmia events with 94% accuracy, an average of 17 minutes before conventional monitors detected any abnormality." That's incredible," Vivian said, genuine pride washing through her. "Is he there? Put him on." "That's why I'm calling," Dominic replied. "He wants both of us to come to the Blackwood Research Facility tomorrow. They're setting up a formal demonstration for the Medical Technology Division. He says he won't do it unless we're both there." Vivian hesitated only briefly. What time? The Blackwood Industries Research Campus was exactly as imposing as Vivian remembered. A sprawling complex of glass and steel nestled against the mountains outside the city. As Dominic's car passed through the security gates, memories flooded back. Of her younger self walking these grounds, full of ambition and ideas, before everything had changed. "You okay?" Dominic asked quietly from the seat beside her, noticing her tension. "Just remembering," Vivian admitted. "It's been a long time. 16 years, 4 months and 12 days, Dominic said precisely. When Vivian looked at him in surprise, he added, "The day you left was the worst of my life. I just didn't realize it until much later." Before Vivian could process this unexpected confession, they arrived at the medical technology building where Lucas was waiting, practically vibrating with excitement in his school uniform, having come directly from classes. "You're both here," he said, his smile widening. "Good, because this is going to change everything." The demonstration exceeded even Vivian's expectations. Lucas presented his cardiac monitoring algorithm to a room full of Blackwood's top medical researchers and executives with the confidence and clarity of someone twice his age. Using the data Dr. Nishimura had provided, he showed how the system could identify subtle patterns preceding cardiac events, potentially giving patients and medical providers crucial minutes of warning before an arrhythmia or other cardiac event occurred. The implications for people with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy are significant, Lucas explained, but the applications extend to many other cardiac conditions as well. Early warning means earlier intervention, which means better outcomes. As the presentation concluded to enthusiastic applause, Vivian found herself blinking back tears of pride. Beside her, Dominic was beaming with undisguised admiration. "That's our son," he said quietly, the simple statement acknowledging what they had created together, despite everything that had gone wrong between them. "Yes," Vivian agreed. "That's our son." The medical division director approached immediately after the presentation, already talking about development timelines and patent applications. Lucas, however, had one more surprise prepared. "Before we discuss next steps," he said firmly, "I want to be clear about my conditions. This technology needs to be accessible to everyone with cardiac conditions, not just those who can afford premium healthcare. I want a commitment that for every commercial unit sold, one will be donated to public health systems serving underprivileged communities. The director looked startled, then turned to Dominic with a questioning expression. You heard him, Dominic said simply. Those are his terms. But the profit margins, the director began, are less important than the lives this could save, Lucas interrupted. That's non-negotiable. Vivian watched this exchange with a swelling sense of pride and something else, a recognition that Lucas had somehow inherited the best of both his parents, her compassion and Dominic's unwavering determination. I'll need to consult with the board, the director said finally. I am the board, Dominic reminded him mildly, or a significant portion of it. Draw up the proposal with Lucas's conditions included. As the executives dispersed, Lucas approached his parents, eyes bright with accomplishment and purpose. What did you think? I think you just changed the future of cardiac care, Vivian said, pulling him into a tight hug. I'm so proud of you I can barely breathe. Your presentation was flawless, Dominic added. And your ethical stance. He paused, something like wonder crossing his features. You're already a better man than I ever was. I don't know about that, Lucas said, glancing between his parents. But I learned from both of you. Mom taught me that doing the right thing matters more than doing the profitable thing. And you taught me that when you believe in something, you don't back down, no matter who's pushing against you. The simple observation hung in the air between them, a bridge connecting their fractured family history. There's a celebration dinner planned, Dominic said after a moment. The research team wants to toast your success. Both of you will come. Vivian hesitated only briefly before nodding. We wouldn't miss it. If you believe that our greatest achievements mean nothing if we can't share them with the people we love, hit that like button. And if you're wondering how this family's journey continues, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. The dinner was held in a private room at one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, with views overlooking the skyline now glittering with evening lights. The research team, clearly impressed by both Lucas's innovation and his ethical stance, treated him not as a teenager or as the boss's son, but as a respected colleague. Vivian, seated beside Dominic at the head of the table, found herself unexpectedly at ease in this world she had fled so many years ago. The conversation flowed naturally between technical discussions of the algorithm's applications and lighter topics, with Lucas at the center, confidently fielding questions and sharing his vision for the technology's future. He belongs here, Dominic said quietly to Vivian as they watched Lucas sketching a diagram on a napkin for one of the senior researchers. Not just at Blackwood Industries, but in this world of innovation and impact. I know, Vivian acknowledged. I've always known he was destined for something extraordinary. I just wanted it to be on his terms, not because of who his father was. And now it is, Dominic observed. He's earned this entirely on his own merit. As the evening wound down, Lucas approached them, his expression thoughtful. Dr. Reeves wants me to present the algorithm at the International Cardiac Innovation Conference next month in London. Both of you should come. London, Vivian echoed, surprised. What about school? It's during spring break, Lucas explained. And Ms. Harlow thinks it would be an excellent addition to my college applications. Of course we'll be there, Dominic said without hesitation. Both of us. Vivian nodded her agreement, realizing that somewhere in the past months, the boundaries between their separate lives with Lucas had begun to blur, creating something new. Not the family they might have been, but a different kind of connection built on mutual respect and shared pride in their son. The weeks leading up to the London conference were filled with preparation. Lucas balanced his schoolwork with refining his presentation, often working late into the evening with either Vivian or Dominic providing feedback and support. The three of them developed a rhythm, a way of orbiting each other that acknowledged their complicated history while focusing on the future. The night before their departure for London, Dominic invited them to dinner at his home, a modernist mansion overlooking the city that Lucas had visited several times but Vivian had never seen. She hesitated before accepting, aware of the symbolic weight of entering Dominic's private space after all these years. The house was exactly as she would have expected, architecturally stunning, impeccably designed, with museum-quality art and cutting-edge technology seamlessly integrated throughout. Yet there were surprising touches of warmth. Photographs of Lucas from chess tournaments and science fairs, clearly obtained after their reconnection. Books on subjects she knew interested him, even a dedicated workspace set up with equipment for his ongoing research. "This is amazing," Lucas said, exploring the lab Dominic had created for him. "It's like you read my mind about the perfect setup." "I had some help," Dominic admitted, glancing at Vivian. "Your mother provided insights about your work habits and preferences." Vivian looked up in surprise. She had indeed mentioned Lucas's tendency to pace while thinking and his preference for multiple screens during a recent conversation with Dominic, but hadn't realized he was gathering information for this. "You've created a beautiful space for him," she acknowledged. "For both of you," Dominic corrected quietly. "Whenever you're here." The simple statement carried layers of meaning that Vivian wasn't ready to fully examine. Instead, she followed them to the dining room, where a chef had prepared Lucas's favorite foods. Another thoughtful detail that spoke to Dominic's genuine effort to know his son. Over dinner, the conversation turned to the future Lucas's college plans, the continued development of the cardiac monitoring system, the upcoming conference in London. "Harvard has an excellent bioengineering program," Dominic mentioned casually, "and their cardiac research center is world-renowned. MIT's artificial intelligence lab would be better for the algorithmic side of my work," Lucas countered. "But I'm also considering Stanford." "All excellent choices," Vivian said, "and all very expensive." "That's not a concern," Dominic said immediately. "Lucas's education is my priority, wherever he chooses to go." "I don't want special treatment," Lucas interjected. "I'm applying for scholarships like everyone else." "And you'll likely receive them," Dominic acknowledged. "But having options matters. Your mother and I both want you to choose based on the program, not the cost." The casual "your mother and I" sent an unexpected warmth through Vivian. The simple recognition of their shared parenthood, their united front in supporting Lucas's future. After dinner, Lucas excused himself to make final adjustments to his presentation, leaving Vivian and Dominic alone on the terrace overlooking the city lights. "Thank you," Dominic said after a comfortable silence, "for allowing me into his life, into your lives." "You've proven me wrong," Vivian admitted. "I didn't believe you could put Lucas first, above the company, above your own agenda. But you have consistently. Having your child reject you before they're even born changes your perspective," Dominic said quietly. "When I told you to take care of the problem, I was thinking only of myself, my ambitions, my timeline, my image. I've regretted those words every day since." "Why didn't you look for us sooner?" Vivian asked the question that had lingered since that first letter arrived. Pride, anger, fear. Dominic's gaze remained fixed on the distant horizon. "By the time I realized what I'd thrown away, you had disappeared completely. Elena refused to tell me anything, and I respected her loyalty to you enough not to force the issue." He paused. "And part of me believed Lucas was better off without me in his life. And now I know that was just another form of selfishness," Dominic admitted. "Avoiding responsibility by convincing myself it was noble sacrifice." He turned to face her fully. "I can never make up for those 16 years, Vivian. But I can be here now for both of you in whatever way you'll allow." The sincerity in his voice touched something in Vivian that she had thought long buried, the memory of why she had fallen for him in the first place. His intensity, his clarity of purpose, his capacity for growth when challenged. "We should check on Lucas," she said, not yet ready to examine the complicated emotions stirring within her. "He tends to lose track of time when he's working." They found Lucas asleep at his new workstation, head pillowed on his arms beside the computer still displaying his presentation slides. The sight of him, so brilliant yet still so young, brought matching smiles to both their faces. "I'll wake him," Vivian said softly. "We should get home." "Stay," Dominic suggested. "There are guest rooms prepared." "It's late," And we have an early flight tomorrow. Vivian hesitated, then nodded. That makes sense. Thank you. As she gently woke Lucas and guided him to the guest room Dominic indicated, Vivian felt a strange sense of déjà vu, as if glimpsing an alternate reality where they had remained a family, where these domestic moments would have been commonplace rather than extraordinary. The London conference was a triumph beyond any of their expectations. Lucas's presentation received a standing ovation from the assembled cardiac specialists, with multiple research institutions and medical technology companies immediately expressing interest in collaboration. Your son is remarkable, Dr. Nishimura told them during the reception afterward, having flown in from Tokyo specifically to attend. Not just his intellect, but his vision for how this technology should serve humanity. You must be very proud. We are. Vivian and Dominic replied in unison, then exchanged surprised glances at their synchronicity. Later that evening, as they celebrated with dinner at a historic restaurant along the Thames, Lucas made an announcement that caught both parents off guard. I've decided where I want to go to college, he said, setting down his fork with determination. MIT for undergraduate with a joint research position at Harvard Medical School. I've already spoken with both institutions, and they're willing to create a specialized program given my work on the cardiac monitoring system. That's ambitious, Vivian said carefully, and impressive that you've already arranged it. I had some help, Lucas admitted, glancing at Dominic. Dad made some calls to set up the meetings, but the program proposal was all mine. Dad, Vivian noted quietly. It was the first time she'd heard Lucas use the term so naturally, without the hesitation that had marked his early attempts to acknowledge Dominic as his father. There's one more thing, Lucas continued. I want us to establish a foundation, the Reed Blackwood Heart Initiative, focused on making advanced cardiac care accessible to everyone, regardless of income or geography, using the profits from the monitoring system to fund research and treatment for people who couldn't otherwise afford it. That's a wonderful idea, Vivian said immediately, touched by his continued commitment to helping others. I agree, Dominic added. We can set it up as a separate entity from Blackwood Industries, with its own board and funding structure. I want both of you involved, Lucas said, looking between them. Mom's compassion and ethical perspective, Dad's business acumen and strategic thinking. Together, you could make this bigger than I ever could alone. The proposal hung in the air between them, not just a charitable foundation, but a framework for continued collaboration, a reason to remain connected beyond their shared parenthood. I'm in, Vivian said after a moment's consideration. If Dominic is. Without question, Dominic replied, his gaze meeting hers with an intensity that spoke of more than just professional cooperation. Lucas smiled, satisfaction evident in his expression. Good, because I've already scheduled our first planning meeting for when we return home. You're getting as manipulative as your father, Vivian observed dryly, though her tone held affection rather than criticism. I prefer strategic, Lucas corrected with a grin. And I learned from the best. The foundation became their shared project over the following months, a neutral ground where they could work together without directly addressing the shifting dynamics between them. Lucas, preparing for his transition to MIT in the fall, watched with barely disguised amusement as his parents gradually moved from formal collaboration to genuine partnership, their complementary strengths creating something neither could have built alone. You two should just admit you still have feelings for each other, he remarked casually one evening as they finished a foundation planning session in Dominic's home office. The tension is getting ridiculous. Lucas, Vivian exclaimed, mortified. What? He shrugged. I'm just saying what everyone sees. Elena mentioned it last week. Even Dr. Nishimura commented on it during our video call. That's enough, Dominic said firmly, though a hint of color had risen in his cheeks. Your mother and I have a complicated history. Obviously, Lucas agreed, gathering his things. But history doesn't have to dictate the future. Isn't that what you're always telling me? He headed for the door, then paused. I'm staying at Jason's tonight for that chess tournament prep session. Just so you know, the house will be empty, in case you want to, talk about foundation stuff without me interrupting. The door closed behind him, leaving Vivian and Dominic in a silence heavy with unspoken possibilities. "He's subtle," Dominic finally said, a reluctant smile tugging at his lips. "About as subtle as you," Vivian replied, but found herself smiling too. "He really is your son." "Our son," Dominic corrected gently. "The best of both of us." The simple acknowledgement hung between them, a bridge spanning 16 years of separation. "Vivian," Dominic began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "Lucas isn't entirely wrong. These past months, working with you, seeing the remarkable woman you've become, feelings I thought long buried have resurfaced." "Dominic, please let me finish," he said quietly. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. What I did 16 years ago was unforgivable. I'm not even asking for a second chance. But I am asking if there might be a possibility of something new, not reclaiming what was lost, but building something different, something better with the people we are now." Vivian studied him in the soft lamplight of the office, the silver threading his dark hair, the lines of experience etched around his eyes, the vulnerability now visible beneath the confident exterior. This was not the ambitious young CEO who had dismissed their child as an inconvenience, but a man humbled by his mistakes, transformed by his love for their son. "I don't know," she admitted honestly. "There's so much history between us." "Then perhaps we start with dinner," Dominic suggested. "Just the two of us. No foundation business, no discussions about Lucas's education or medical care. Just two people getting to know each other again." The proposal was simple, reasonable, with no pressure or expectations attached. Yet Vivian knew it represented a threshold, a conscious choice to explore possibilities she had never allowed herself to consider. "Dinner," she agreed finally. "We can start there. If you believe that sometimes the longest journeys bring us exactly where we need to be, even if it's back to where we started, hit that like button. And if you want to see more stories about second chances and unexpected redemption, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison." 2 years later, the Reed Blackwood Heart Initiative headquarters occupied the top floor of a renovated historical building downtown, its modern interior contrasting with the classic architecture. The foundation had grown rapidly, already funding cardiac care programs in 12 countries and supporting research into next-generation treatments for conditions like hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Vivian stood at the window of her office, watching the sunset paint the city skyline in gold and crimson. On her desk, a framed photograph showed Lucas at his MIT freshman orientation, flanked by his proud parents, his smile bright with promise and possibility. A knock at her door pulled her from her thoughts. Dominic entered, his expression warm as he crossed to join her at the window. "Lucas just called," he said. "His algorithm refinements passed the final clinical trial phase. FDA approval should come through next month." "That's wonderful," Vivian said, genuine pride washing through her. "He's accomplished more at 18 than most people do in a lifetime." "He had good examples to follow," Dominic said, his hand finding hers in a gesture that had become natural over the past 2 years. "Your determination, your integrity, and your vision," Vivian added. "Your refusal to accept limitations." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights begin to twinkle as darkness fell. So much had changed since that first tentative dinner, a careful reconnection that had gradually evolved into something neither of them had anticipated. A relationship built not on rekindled passion, but on mutual respect, shared purpose, and the deep understanding that can only come from having traveled difficult roads both together and apart. "The board approved the expansion of the donation program," Dominic said after a moment. "We'll be able to provide monitoring systems to an additional 50 hospitals in underserved communities by the end of the year." "Lucas will be thrilled," Vivian replied. "It was his top priority for this quarter." "He's a better CEO than I ever was," Dominic acknowledged with a hint of pride. "Leading with compassion rather than just ambition." "He's not CEO yet," Vivian reminded him with a smile. "He still has 3 years of college to complete." "A technicality," Dominic waved dismissively. Everyone knows he's the true visionary behind both the Foundation and Blackwood Medical Technologies. I'm just keeping his seat warm. The easy acknowledgement of Lucas's leadership role, so different from the controlling, ego-driven man she had known 16 years ago, was just one of the many transformations Vivian had witnessed in Dominic. His heart condition, his reconnection with Lucas, and perhaps most surprisingly, his willingness to be vulnerable with her had gradually revealed the man who had been buried beneath layers of ambition and fear of weakness. "Are you ready to go?" Dominic asked, glancing at his watch. "Our reservation is in 30 minutes, and Lucas will be video calling at 8. "Just need to grab my coat," Vivian replied, moving to the closet in her office. Their weekly dinner had become a cherished ritual, sometimes at fine restaurants, sometimes at Dominic's home, occasionally at Vivian's apartment, which she had kept despite spending more and more time at the mansion. Tonight was special, marking 2 years since that first tentative step toward reconciliation. As they walked to the elevator, Dominic's hand rested lightly at the small of her back, a gesture of intimacy that still sometimes surprised her with its naturalness. The Foundation staff, accustomed to seeing them together, offered warm goodnights as they passed. "Ms. Reed, the cardiac camp funding proposal is ready for your review," called her assistant. "Should I email it to you, or wait until Monday?" "Monday is fine, Tara," Vivian replied. "Enjoy your weekend." In the elevator, Dominic raised an eyebrow. "Still using Reed professionally?" "It's who I've been for 16 years, Vivian explained, though they had discussed this before. "The Foundation knows our history, but I've built my reputation under that name." "Of course," Dominic nodded, respecting her choice as he had learned to do in so many areas. "Though the hyphenated option remains open, should you ever reconsider." The casual reference to possibilities they had begun to discuss more seriously in recent months brought a smile to Vivian's lips. Noted. The restaurant was one of their favorites, an intimate space with exceptional food and a private corner table that allowed for conversation without interruption. As they settled in, Dominic ordered champagne, a departure from their usual wine selection. "Celebrating something specific?" Vivian asked, noting the subtle tension in his posture. So familiar after all these years, yet still sometimes difficult to read. "Perhaps," Dominic replied enigmatically. "Let's wait for Lucas's call first." Their son's face appeared on Dominic's tablet precisely at 8, his dormitory room visible in the background, walls covered with white boards filled with equations and diagrams. "Mom! Dad!" Lucas greeted them, his smile bright despite obvious fatigue. "Sorry I couldn't make it home this weekend. The trial data analysis is taking every spare minute." "We understand," Vivian assured him. "Your father mentioned the results are promising." Better than promising. Lucas's excitement was palpable even through the screen. The predictive accuracy is now at 97.8%, with false positives under 1%. "We're already getting inquiries from cardiac centers worldwide." "That's extraordinary," Dominic said, pride evident in his voice. "You've created something truly revolutionary." "We all did," Lucas corrected. "Your business strategy, Mom's ethical framework, my algorithm. It was always a family project." The simple acknowledgement, family, warmed Vivian's heart. Despite the unconventional path they had taken, despite 16 years of separation and secrets, they had somehow found their way to this. A genuine connection built on mutual respect and shared purpose. "Actually," Lucas continued, his expression shifting to something more serious, "that's partly why I called exactly on time tonight. I have news that couldn't wait." "Is everything okay?" Vivian asked immediately, maternal concern surfacing. "Everything's perfect," Lucas assured her. Dr. Nishimura's team just published their 5-year follow-up study on patients who received the procedure I had. The results are definitive. 99.4% show complete resolution of symptoms with no recurrence. The condition is effectively cured, not just managed. "Lucas, that's wonderful," Vivian breathed, tears springing to her eyes. The shadow that had hung over her son's future, over all their futures, was finally, conclusively lifted. "There's more," Lucas continued. The monitoring system we developed has already saved an estimated 12,000 lives worldwide. People who received early warnings of cardiac events and got treatment in time. His voice caught slightly. That's 12,000 families who didn't have to say goodbye. Dominic reached for Vivian's hand under the table, squeezing gently as they both absorbed the magnitude of what their son had accomplished. What they had accomplished together. I'm so proud of you, Vivian said softly. Of the man you've become. We both are, Dominic added. More than words can express. Lucas smiled, then glanced at something off-screen. I should go study group for quantum computing in 5 minutes. But Dad, didn't you have something you wanted to discuss while I was on the call? Dominic shot their son a look that Vivian couldn't quite interpret. Yes, actually. Perfect timing. Lucas's grin widened. Then I'll stay on just a minute longer. For moral support. Moral support for what? Vivian asked, glancing between them with growing suspicion. What are you two planning? Dominic took a deep breath, then reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. This isn't how I planned to do this, he said, his voice uncharacteristically nervous. I had a whole speech prepared about second chances and new beginnings. Vivian's breath caught as understanding dawned. Dominic, 16 years ago, I made the worst mistake of my life, he continued, opening the box to reveal a stunning emerald ring, her favorite stone, not a diamond. I put my ambition above what truly mattered. I lost you, and I lost 16 years with our remarkable son. You didn't lose us, Vivian said softly. We found our way back to each other. Yes, Dominic agreed, his eyes never leaving hers. And I don't want to waste another day. Vivian Reed, will you marry me? Not because of our past, but because of our future. Not because of what we once were, but because of who we've become together. The restaurant around them seemed to fade away as Vivian looked into the eyes of the man before her. Not the ambitious young CEO who had broken her heart, nor the ruthless billionaire she had hidden from for 16 years, but the father who had moved heaven and earth to save their son. The partner who had supported her vision for the foundation. The man who had learned, finally, that true strength came from vulnerability and connection, not control. Yes, she said simply. Yes, I will. Lucas's whoop of joy through the tablet broke the moment, reminding them both that he was still watching. Finally, do you know how hard it's been keeping this secret? Dad's been planning this for months. You knew? Vivian asked, laughing through happy tears as Dominic slipped the ring onto her finger. Of course I knew, Lucas replied with a grin. He asked for my blessing. Very traditional, very touching. There may have been tears. There were not tears, Dominic protested, though his own eyes were suspiciously bright. Whatever you say, Dad, Lucas teased. Now I really do have to go. Love you both. And congratulations. As the call ended, Dominic raised his glass of champagne. To new beginnings, he proposed. And to the extraordinary young man who brought us back together. To Lucas, Vivian agreed, touching her glass to his. And to the family we've become, against all odds. Later that evening, walking hand in hand along the riverfront near the restaurant, Vivian found herself reflecting on the remarkable journey that had brought them to this moment. From that terrifying day when the manila envelope had arrived, revealing that Dominic had found them, to this night of celebration and commitment. A path neither of them could have imagined. What are you thinking? Dominic asked, noticing her contemplative expression. That sometimes the things we fear most turn out to be the things we need most, Vivian replied. I was so afraid when you found us, so certain you would destroy everything I'd built for Lucas. And instead you saved him. You gave him not just the medical care he needed, but the other half of himself, the part one could never provide alone. She stopped walking, turning to face him fully. And somewhere along the way you gave me back a part of myself too, the part that still believed in possibilities. Dominic's hand came up to gently touch her cheek. You gave me far more, Vivian. You showed me what truly matters, what legacy really means. He glanced up at the stars now visible above the city lights. Not buildings or companies or wealth, but the connections we create, the lives we touch, the love we share. As they continued their walk, Vivian's emerald ring catching the light from the street lamps, she thought of all the twists and turns that had led them here. The pain and fear, the secrets and revelations, the healing and growth. None of it had been easy. All of it had been necessary. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had made a different choice 16 years ago? She asked. If you had welcomed the pregnancy, if we had stayed together? Dominic considered this thoughtfully. I've asked myself that many times, but I'm not sure we would have found our way to this particular happiness. I wasn't ready then to be the man Lucas needed as a father, or the partner you deserved. And now, he said, drawing her close, I hope I'm worthy of the second chance you've given me, of the family we're building together. You are, Vivian assured him, rising on tiptoes to kiss him softly. We all are. If you believe that sometimes our greatest mistakes can lead to our most profound redemption, hit that like button. And if you want more stories about families finding their way through impossible circumstances to unexpected joy, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Remember, it's never too late for a new beginning. And sometimes the most beautiful chapters of our lives come after the most difficult ones.